Yes, so welcome you all. Namaskar, everyone, and welcome to this divine journey of 15 sessions of Naha Srimad Bhagavad Gita, which you are learning through Sundarajanji. So, over to Sundarajanji, please take us to the next level, next step. Thank you, Ji.
Thank you, Ji. Pranam, everybody. And before we start, we'll start with the usual Vedic invocation and then go on to chapter 14 of Bhagavad Gita. So please join me in the Vedic invocation. Om Sahanavavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vedvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. So welcome everybody to our next session or continued session on chapter 14 of the Bhagavad Gita. And chapter 14 has to do with Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga, which is the nature of the three gunas. Guna, as we saw in the first, like last session, is basically the three qualities that are present in Prakriti. And the Prakriti Purusha model is belonging to the Sankhya model, also adapted by Yoga and Bhagavad Gita. Having said that, we'll start. This is the basic model of a Jiva with the 24 tattvas of Prakriti, the 24 components of Prakriti. And we already saw it, so I don't want to go into detail in this session on what the tattvas are. We can refer to the last video on that. So I just want to show this model will be a central framework. Whenever I say the body complex, the physical complex, think of this as the 24 tattva prakriti as a physical complex. Okay. So we move on to the next shloka, which is shloka 3. And shloka 3 and 4 are usually combined, and we'll look at it one at a time here. Mama yonir brahma tasmin garbam dadamyaham sambhava sarva bhutanam tato bhavati bharata. Here, Shri Bhagavan talks about Prakriti and Mama he talks about as Purusha. Continuing on the fourth, he says, Sarva yonishu kaunteya murtaya sambhavantiyam tasam brahma mahadyonir aham bija pradapita. Now, both these together deliver the same message and it's a continuous message. Now, Mama Yoner Mahad Brahma. Brahma or Mahad means Prakriti. So there is Prakriti, Mahad, and Mahad has 24 tattvas. Brahma means all expansive. Here it's not Brahmaji or Brahman. It's Brahma means all expansive. Mahad is the Yoni or is the origin. And Aham, I the Purusha or I the Mahapurusha or Purushottama, am the life giver to in this Yoni. So whenever there is, you think of Yoni, you think of it as the source or the origin. And when Prakriti or inert matter comes in contact with Purusha, which is consciousness, there is a chance or there is a possibility of the Jiva interacting with the universe. Right? Without Prakriti, Jiva cannot be seen or felt. And without Purusha, there is no movement. Prakriti is inert. So this is a beautiful play between the two. And we'll see that in a couple of slides. So as I was saying, Purusha unites with Prakriti, and this play or the Leela happens in a cyclic matter. Like there are multiple creations and dissolutions of the universe according to Sanatana Dharma, right? And if you know the mantras or the callings, every time you take a sankalpa, you say Ashtavimshati Tame, Kali Yuge, Pratame Pati, and all those things. And this is the 28th Tama. Tama is the 28th night or the 28th cycle of creation. And if you look into the Hindu cosmological timeline, it goes into trillions of years and it goes into a cyclic timeline, right? And we discussed that in our earlier video a long time ago. But I'm just giving it to you here for continuation and bringing that into memory as we go forward. the cyclic nature of creation and dissolution. Okay. Now, when Bhagavan says that I am reflected among all the bodies, it doesn't mean that Paramatma is split. It simply means Paramatma is reflected. Now, this is very hard to understand because as human beings or as limited beings, we can think of one entity. So if I take a tomato, it can be in only one place. And if I want to split it, I have to physically split it. It becomes half a tomato, right? So that's how our mind works in terms of splitting. But in terms of reflection, think of Paramatma being everywhere at once and is not divided. So that is something we'll slowly eventually learn how to see that. But for me, for now, just trust that all the jivas are a reflection of the Paramatma in Prakriti or in Maya. Okay. So that's what he says, Tasmin Garbham Dadamyaham. And here says, Sarva Yonishu Kaunteya. In all these yonis, in all these origins, I am the Bija Pradapita. I am the cause of origin. Who I means not Krishna the charioteer, but here it is Bhagavan or Ishvara or Mahapurusha, right? Is the seed giver for all this births and deaths and the cycle that's happening. Now, I want to put a caveat here because even though it is Vedanta, different schools look at this same thing in different ways. There is interpretation differences. So when we talk to Dvaita, when we talk about Dvaita, Dvaitis say, or Ramanujacharya and Dvaitis say, that there is a definite distinction between Paramatma and the Jivatma. They are separate and they can come close, but they'll never merge. Whereas Visishta Advaita says that Bhagavan and the Jivatma, which is Paramatma and Jivatma, are same but separate. This confuses you a little, but think of your arms and legs, right? It is part of your body, but it's not your body. Like they are independent, but they're also joined. So think of it as that. So it's as Jivatma and Paramatma united. They're one whole, but Jivatma is never equivalent to all of Paramatma. Whereas Advaita, which is Shankaracharya's Kevala Advaita, talks about Jiva and Parama being one and the same. That's why it's called Advaita, right? The more deeper you go into it, there's a lot of technicality. But from Bhagavad Gita standpoint of view, we'll simply treat it as one Paramatma who is reflected as multiple Jivatmas and this beautiful play of Prakriti. So we will not go into individual philosophies. We'll stay at the Bhagavad Gita level for now. Okay. And I just wanted to do a pictorial representation or a high level of what this would look like. So I already told you that this, think of it as one body. It's a combination of the five indriyas and the five karmendriyas and the three gunas and all these things. So if I take this, the entire universe has multiple jivarasis or multiple jivas. Each has a different body. Right from an amoeba all the way to Brahma, you have different bodies and different dimensions and different geographic zones. Paramatma is reflected in each of these, making this a very like for example, I'm talking to you. 80 years ago or 250 years ago, this body was disintegrated in different forms, right? The uranium in this body or the gold in this body or the carbon in this body was in different places. Now it's come together. And it's formed in a name and place called Sundararajan. And there's a mind complex and there's an Atma sitting inside it. That Atma is expressing itself or allowing the expression to happen. After a while, that will move away from this body. The body actually disintegrates and this play goes on and on, right? So when you look at the body, every single organism has something called a life cycle. All of us have read about this in biology class, right? Now, that is the law of the universe. So if I take the propagation of a species, this cycle is indispensable. Meaning, let's take, for example, a frog, right? So from an egg to a larva to a tadpole to the adult frog, the cycle happens. Somewhere in that cycle, there's a reproduction. And then there's again that cycle happens in the next generation and the next generation. So the DNA is propagated. Now, what about the jiva? This is the prakriti propagation that happens. And in that propagation, mutation also happens. This is all at the prakriti level, right? Right from, it's not limited to just reptiles or mammals, it's even for trees and plants, right? This reproduction and propagation happens. I'll take one step into the philosophy side and see how the jiva recycles itself. Now, think of it this way. I couldn't get a proper diagram for this, but you would have seen it in ISKCON where there's a baby to old age. There's a cycle that happens where jiva transitions. But think of this as your one life cycle. There is birth, growth, and death. When I say death, it's death of the body. But the jiva migrates or takes up another body, enjoys, drops it, keeps going, and keeps going. And this is one beautiful journey of the jiva. It's the jiva yatra, right? And the jiva yatra keeps going till there is ajnana, until there is binding towards or attachment towards life. Abhinivesha is there. Now, this one lifetime of one jiva. But think about the universal level. There are multiple lifetimes of multiple jivas simultaneously happening. And all this is the work of a single Paramatma reflected in Prakriti. Now, this is even very limited, but in your mind, when you meditate, you have to take a back seat and look at this entire universe as a tiny dot, and you viewing it from that grand big plan or a big picture and seeing this Jiva Yatra happen. Then you can understand the magnitude of the Atma or the Atma Swarupa. Now, this again reflects itself in chapter 11 of the Vishwarupa Darshana and all, right? But think of it as when we talk about ego, maine ye kiya, or I did that, and why me, and all those things. All that will be a tiny speck in one of this Jiva Yatra somewhere, right? So if you think you're great or important, or if you think you're unworthy, think of all that as temporary, because you, the Jiva, or you, the Paramatma, are always supreme. There is zero reasons for you to think that you're unworthy, right? This body is given to you for now, or you have taken it up because you wanted to play with it, enjoy it, be helpful to others, make this environment a great environment, and keep moving. Drama over, keep moving, right? At the end of it, everybody is happy. And every jiva thinks of it this way, then the universe becomes a happy place. Selfishness gets into the place. And this chapter is important on that, because we are talking about the gunas. There are great souls, the gunas. Sattva guna brings about the great things in you. Rajo guna brings about desires and insatiable, ambitions. And there are tamo guna that drags others down. And this interplay of the jiva is the subject matter of the talk, this whole chapter and chapter 17. So having said that, we move on. So far, I hope everybody is clear about the jiva yatra and where the gunas play into this. We are slowly coming into the guna itself. Okay. So again, I'll bring you back to where we left off with the fourth shloka, which is Sarva Yonishu Kaunteya. In all the yonis, like we saw, in all these bodies, Kaunteya, Murtayas Sambhavantiya, Tasam Yonim Mahad Brahma, Aham Bija Pradapita. I am the Bija Prada. I am the reflection in all these yonis, happening at all the time. And that is why, whether be it a dog, Brahmana, Gavi, Hastini, Shuni, Shwapaka, and all these things. There's one more Gita shloka that says, whether I'm a learned man, or when you see a learned man, or a dog tamer, or a cow, Atma is in all these things. Once you see Atma in everything, you become an Atma Jnani. Okay. Now, most of us think of Jnani as some Baba sitting under a tree with no email address and all those things. That's not true. See, when you walk into a room and let's say you've never seen gold. You've never seen gold. Okay. If you're asked to identify gold, it's hard for you to do so, right? So let us say, um, somebody walks into, there's a 5-year-old that walks into a room, there's so many objects, and you ask them to identify ferrum. The kid will ask, what? Ferrum. Things made of ferrum, just show it to me. I have no clue what ferrum is. Okay. Do you know what is iron? Yeah, iron. Okay. Now show me anything made of iron. So the moment you know what is iron, you can identify everything made of iron, correct? Once you know gold, you can identify everything made of gold. That is a gold jnani or an iron jnani. Once you understand the Atma, you can see everything made of the Atma. That is an Atma Jnani. Atma Jnani is not a special person with horns on the head. A person who can identify Atma understands that the universe is Atma and sees only the Atma everywhere. That's all it is. And we are taking this whole journey is demystifying and bringing down to a very practical level the understanding of Vedanta and understanding of Gita. Okay. Okay, now moving on. Bhagavan gives us an intro to the three gunas. Now we have built up a lot, like in movies, there's a lot of build up that's been happening towards what is this three guna and all those things. Now we'll actually demystify it. Sattvam rajastamayiti guna prakriti sambhavaha nibadnanti mahabhaho dehe dehinam avyayam. Okay. So Bhagavan says Sattvam, Rajaha, Tamaha. So Sattva Guna, Rajo Guna, Tamo Guna are three types of qualities or gunas of Prakriti. Prakriti Sambhavaha. They are born in and of Prakriti. Nibadnanti, they tie or they bind you, Mahabahu. Hey Mahabahu, hey Arjuna. Dehe Dehinam Avyayam. It ties the Jiva or the rider of the body, which is Atma, with the body every time. So if my Jiva Yatra is happening in this body, it is because I have some attachments and prarabdhas that I've taken up. And the moment I feel that is all done, I'll leave this body and go. That's how death happens according to Vedanta. That when the karma finishes with one body, the Jiva moves on, right? And the rest of the people sit and cry. That's different. But here, what is that thing that binds you to the body? It is Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. And we will see how this bond happens. Okay, now Bhagavan goes a little deeper into the three gunas. Tatra sattvam nirmalatvad prakashakam anamayam sukha sangena badnati jnana sangena chanagha. Hey anagha. Agha means impurity or papa. Anagha means a person who is pure. Arjuna, hey Arjuna, Sattva is pure. So I'll actually graph it out and tell you here as we go. So he says that Sattva is Nirmalatva, Prakashaka, and Anamayam. So which means it's pure, effulgent or bright, and Anamayam meaning healthy or it's good for you, right? What does it do? It binds you to comfort, stability, and contentment, right? And it also binds you to knowledge. Jnana Sangena Bharata and Sukha Sangena. So people who are pure or sattvic, as we speak, are drawn more towards Bhagavad Gita or understanding or knowledge or Puranas, right? You always want to be on the forefront of innovation and understanding, exploration, right? And it also binds you deeply into the pursuit of, or not pursuit, but comfort, sukha. You don't want to be in a negative role, like if like all the teleserials that nowadays it's become all about negativity. That drama, some people are very much attracted to drama, right? But sattvic people are not attracted to drama. They're attracted to discussions, they're attracted to explorations, and they're attracted to stability. So that's the binding. Now what about rajas and tamas? We'll see what happens in rajas and tamas. So Rajo ragatmakam vidhi trishna sanga samudbhavam tannibadhnati kaunteya karma sangena dehinam. Hey Arjuna, Rajas or Rajo, Ragatmakam Vidhi. It is born of Raga. Raga is a deep desire, right? And it is Trishna Sanghena Bharata. Trishna is basically cravings. So, Rajas is filled with desire and passion and born of cravings. Anything where it leaves you deeply dissatisfied. Whenever you're having a craving, that's because of the Rajasic mindset. Okay. And what does it do? It binds a human or it binds a jiva to the body with karma. Karma is the bond that it uses to bind. So, why is karma used? So, when there's a deep dissatisfaction, what happens? People run the rat race. They get into this. I have to, pay my mortgages, or I want to become a CIO or CEO, whatever it is. I want to buy a car, a Tesla car. जो भी है, it's whatever tiny desire or great desire there is. If you have a desire and you feel inadequate or unsatisfied, or you want to do something, that's all rajas. Now, none of these are bad. Please be very careful. None of the gunas are good or bad. You have to understand them in their own terms. Okay. And then we'll make the judgment as to how to use the gunas to improve yourself rather than using yourself for the sake of the gunas. Okay. So you have to control them. So far, if I hope it's clear. Like sattva is positive, uh, rajas is active, and we'll see what tamas brings us. Tamas tvajnanajam vidhi mohanam sarvadehinam pramadalasya nidrabis tannibadhnati bharata. So, hey Bharata, hey Arjuna, tamaha literally means darkness. Okay. Now, what does tamas do? Tamas is based off ignorance. Okay. And it's based off delusion. Okay. Here he uses two words. Ajnanajam vidhi mohanam sarvadehinam. In all the dehas, including a jnani, there is a small bit of tamas. If you don't have tamas, you won't be able to sleep. You'll be fully awake, and it becomes a disease on its own. So tamas, from time to time, it's required in small doses, but that should not be your primary or predominant guna. Okay. Tan nibadnati. Now, how does tamas tie the jiva to the body? It ties it with carelessness, pramada, alasya. Alasya is laziness, and nidra happy. Now, nidra here does not mean just sleep for 8 hours a day. Nidra means excessive sleep. There are some people who really want to sleep for long hours. I mean, this is like out of laziness, right? So that is the criticism here, not about any defect in the body. No, we're not talking about medical conditions. We're talking about preferences. Okay, want to make that very clear. Now, before going into the next shloka, I just wanted to draw you how these three gunas affect all of us, right? And I want to dwell a little into what is called the cognitive and behavioral biases. Now, when I see the world, now I don't know what the world is like to you. Now, all of us will be seeing the same truth, but we will be interpreting it in our own way. And that is because our mind is clouded with our own thoughts and our own bindings, including Bhagavad Gita, including a meeting at the office, or TV show, whatever it is. You will be learning based on your upbringing, based on your social conditioning, and based on your core gunas, which is the prarabdha, your desire. So you're learning through your biases, not in spite of your biases. So all that clouded mind will take a word or an advice and either reject it or throw it away or disregard it or adapt it. So when you want to be successful, let's say you want your child to be successful, the first thing you need to do is remove the biases, or at least condition the biases to be positive. Remove the fixed mindset and give the child a growth mindset where they adapt, explore, and try to grow with it rather than reject it, right? And on the internet, you'll see so many. I'll come to the actual number of biases and all those things, but you'll be surprised that the amount of biases that are there. I'm not talking about, big biases. Human mind is conditioned like it's defective because we have lots of inbuilt biases, right? Even the most best rational people have this, and we will go into that in just slight a bit. But some of the biases that I'm talking about is, say, for example, there's something called heuristic bias. There is a confirmation bias. So let me go into confirmation bias now. Let us say I like a football team, right? This could be a religion, this could be nationality, this could be language, this could be anything like football team or a hockey team, whatever. Let's say I like hockey team X, right? Or football team X. Now, my bias towards that is going to make me hate all the people that are talking ill of it or against. Let's say Team B. When I see the person in a party, then I'll argue about how great my team is and how bad your team is, right? And anything that happens to my team that's negative, my mind will ignore. And anything that is positive about my team or negative about the other team, my mind will be happy, right? So easiest way is to see, for example, religion, right? Somebody says bad about your religion, then your mind is going to be extremely angry. But somebody else who is not in your religion will be extremely happy. Same word, right? That's how your mind, when you consume the news, when you watch TV channels, you'll be watching it with a confirmation bias, meaning you want to see only the channels that support your point of view. You don't want to watch TV channels that is, the opposite point of view. And this is only one of the hundreds of biases that your mind has. And heuristic bias, for example, there was an experiment that was given to people, and a random number was thrown out, say 400. I'm just giving a word, 400, right? And you dwell on that number 400 for a while, and then they'll ask you a question like, how many countries are there in Africa, the continent, right? How many countries are there? And people will say, 150, 200, 125, or if you go low to say 102, the right answer would be like 56. People chose the high number because a big number was thrown out there. Then they did the experiment, the same thing, like they threw a number like 12 and then asked the same question to a different set of people. And they said like 36 or 25 or 42 or something like that, the low. Because your mind is already anchored onto a particular number, anything that's asked after, and this is what salespeople do, they'll say, okay, this item is $5,000, and then they'll strike it off and say, okay, now it's 250. You'll buy it because you think it's cheaper. Had they told you this is $10, now I'm going to sell it to you for 250, you won't buy it because you have anchored your mind. So your mind is inherently biased more than you think it is. And that's where Bhagavad Gita comes. And if you read chapter 14 with that intention, it's not just this guna and that guna, and you do a puja and it won't help. But you have to understand the biases of behavior and thought. Then you can transition yourself from tamas to rajas, rajas to sattva. And the whole idea is to remove all these biases and see Paramatma or see Bhagavan as it is, not as you want it to see. Right? So that's where we are going. And last but not the least, before we move forward, is in the last three shlokas, we talked about one thing. Sattva binds you to knowledge, Rajas binds you to karma, and Tamas binds you to ignorance and laziness. However, all three of them bind you. That is the message. All three of them bind you. Whether you're bound by a golden chain or by a copper chain or an iron chain, doesn't matter. You're still a prisoner. So the idea is just because you're sattvic doesn't mean that it's great. It simply means that you're a glorified prisoner. Whole of Bhagavad Gita, and Bhagavan himself says, Nistray Gunyo Bhavarjuna. So at one point, you'll have to go beyond the gunas. right? That's where we are going to get at. And I'm conscious of time, so we'll dwell on the next shloka and see the nature of the gunas, and then we'll open it up for question answers. Now, so this is a summary again, like this shloka, shloka 9 is a summary of the previous three shlokas. So I won't go deep into it. I'll just read it and then we'll move on. Sattvam sukhe sanjayati rajah karmani bharata jnanam avrutya tu tamah pramade sanjayatyuta. This is a summary of the previous three, which is sattva binds you to sukha, rajas binds you to karma, and jnana binds you to carelessness. Okay. Now, what is the nature of these three? This is the cyclic play between the guna is being mentioned here. Rajastamascha sattvam bhavati bharata rajas sattvam tamaschaiva tamas sattvam rajastada. Okay. Now, there are three gunas that we already saw, and we kind of just dwelled into the nature of the three gunas. Now, what Bhagavan says here is Rajaha Tamaha cha abhibhuya sattvam bhavati bharata. Now, overpowering Rajas and Tamas, Sattva becomes predominant. Sometimes Raja becomes predominant, overpowering Sattva and Tamas. And at other times, Tamas becomes predominant by overpowering Sattva and Rajas. That's all it is. Like it's the interplay of these three gunas that is mentioned in this shloka. Now, what is the outcome when each of this guna is predominant? Your diet and your behavior, your dana, your dharma, your karma, your thought process, all that will be mentioned as we go deeper and deeper into the chapter. Okay. So with that, I just wanted to take a couple of minutes for further reading because we don't want to end without talking about further reading. One of the best books on cognitive bias is one of my absolute favorite. It's Thinking Fast and Slow. It's by a psychologist Daniel Kahneman, and he also won a Nobel Prize. Like it's him and his partner, both were psychologists in Israel, and Amos Tversky, right? And it's just mind blowing. If you've not read this book, or if you've read another book called The Undoing Project, Undoing Project is also about the same thing, but there the subject matter are Daniel Kahneman and his partner Amos, right? So it's all about the cognitive bias and about how our mind is susceptible or programmed to be biased. Now, the second one, you have to check this out on Google. Google for Cognitive Bias Codex. It will lead you to a Google page, right? Sorry, Wikipedia page. And there are other pages where it comes. But on Wikipedia page, all these tiny letters, they're all clickable. Each one is a link. And there are about 188 cognitive biases. 188, right? So where there is too much information or not enough meaning, or when we need to act fast, what should we remember? Your mind is taking bits and pieces of information at any given time, making a mental picture of it, and trying to construct your own reality. And that's what's happening every single moment, including when you're listening to the Bhagavad Gita now. Your mind will be partly on me talking, partly on something else going on another screen, or something else happening at the back of your mind. All those things, through bits and pieces, your mind is putting together. And Bhagavad Gita is coming to you, say, out of 100%, say 60% would come, your mind would process, but it would construct its own other 40% back, right? And that's where we are going with how to learn anything, the learning cognitive bias, and how to unlearn and relearn yourself, the undoing project. Okay. So having said that, I want to open up for discussion because we are at 4:40, and then see where we go with this. And before we do that, we'll do the closing prayers. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadhaya Purnameva Vasishyate ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। हरिः ओम् श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ओम्।